Is it true that Taehyung didn't know the contents of Jungkook's last message in Los Angeles? Why did Jungkook mention Justin Bieber's song in the middle of a serious statement? And what does the expensive microphone he used in that live broadcast mean? This new fact shook the hearts of the ARMY, not just about the BTS reunion, but about something more personal, deeper, and more painful than ever imagined. New facts revealed. Jungkook's secret message to Taehyung before parting ways in LA. Is this just a coincidence? Or is there something we never knew before? Just on a seemingly ordinary night, the world seemed to freeze for a moment as Jungkook appeared before millions of longing eyes. His live broadcast became the first spark after he completed his military service with Jimin on June 11, 2025. The face looked fresh, the smile remained the same, but something was different, not just from the atmosphere, but from the way he spoke. Jungkook isn't just back. It appears with a message. And that message, not everyone is aware of it, except those who are really paying attention. Why did Jungkook mention Justin Bieber's changes in his broadcast session? Why does the voice that sounds through that expensive microphone feel less like an ordinary professional promotion, but more like a disguised personal statement? And even more shockingly, why is it that only Taehyung is absent from the topic of conversation, when, in fact, all BTS members are preparing for a big reunion in spring 2026? Is this a sign that something has happened in Los Angeles before they parted? Several soldiers who attended the broadcast said they felt unusual emotional vibrations from Jungkook. Not only because this was his first public appearance since being off duty, but because his tone of voice and expression seemed to harbor something that had not yet been conveyed. There was one moment that couldn't be ignored, when he looked at the screen, paused for a moment, then said in a low voice, "Change hurts, but sometimes we have to let people know that we tried." Is that for Taehyung? The words seemed to come out of nowhere, without context. But it is not Jungkook if it does not insert meaning in tranquility. He is not an idol who likes to get attention through drama, but when he speaks, especially in private moments like this, there is always something bigger than just words, and even more suspiciously, why was the broadcast not re-uploaded on the official platform? Why important snippets just vanish hours later, replaced by finer, more cut versions? Ordinary questions flooded the community forums. On Twitter, hashtags such as hashtag message to Taehyung, hashtag Jungkook changes, and hashtag what happened began to dominate the conversation from that evening. Some ARMY even speculated that before Jungkook returned to Korea, he had met someone secretly in LA. And even more corroborating that allegation, one of the anonymous accounts known to often leak accurate information about BTS wrote, Jungkook left something before boarding the plane. Something that has not been returned. Not things, but feelings. Who did he leave? And was it a feeling he had never expressed publicly? Even to Taehyung, this is then the subject of the most heated debate. In a previous interview, Jungkook had talked about how he felt he had changed during his military service. He mentions that he learned more to restrain himself, to be more silent, and to prefer to keep what he thinks hidden so as not to hurt others. But isn't that also a form of actual loss of communication, where Jungkook and Taehyung at odds before the military? No one can answer for sure. But surprisingly, during the live broadcast, Jungkook looked at the camera and muttered, "I hope he's watching this." Who is the he in question? Neither name was mentioned. But the look in his eyes, yes, ARMY knows, the look in his eyes belongs to someone who is speaking for someone who means a lot. And at the same time, Taehyung, where is he? There was no sign of Taehyung's involvement that night. No reaction on social media. In fact, when ARMY started to buzz in the context of Jungkook's broadcast, Taehyung actually shared random photos on Instagram story, something that made fans wonder, was it a form of escapism? Or a silent reply to the message he just received? Is there really something going on between them in Los Angeles? Back to a few months ago, before Jungkook left for his military service, he and Taehyung were spotted together in LA. Some fans captured the rare moment in a small restaurant, with no staff, no crew, just the two of them. There was no smile as wide as usual, no camera they looked at. But what was noticeable was a serious conversation, some emotional-looking gestures, and one hug before they exited in the direction of each other's cars. And from that moment on, there was no longer any togetherness between Jungkook and Taehyung that was publicly recorded. Not on social media, not on the BTS activity schedules that HYBE had announced before the military period began. Was the message a farewell? A member of the label staff said in a podcast that sometimes members have their own way of coming to terms with the past before welcoming the future. What is Jungkook and his past relationship with Taehyung? To be sure, Jungkook's live broadcast was not just a comeback after the military. It was a stage to convey something that could not be said in ordinary words, and the choice of changes, a song that talks about pain, loss, and the struggle to grow, was no accident. The song is not a mainstream hit song that is on the rise in 2025, but was specifically chosen by Jungkook. He even repeated a verse that read, "Some days I feel like I'm losing myself / I feel like I'm breaking down." Is it a hidden message? Or an expression of emotion that he never had time to send directly? Now, the ARMY began to assemble piece by piece. From the faint words, from the facial expressions, from the song choices, to from the camera's repeated flashes of expensive microphones, it's as if Jungkook wants to make sure that his voice is heard clearly, even to someone who might not be watching right away, but will be watching later, when the time is right. And if it's true that the message was intended for Taehyung, what would happen if he replied to it? Or is it? It will never reciprocate. One thing's for sure behind all the hype. Surrounding BTS's comeback, new album, and world tour, there's a deeper story. A story about two friends who may have hurt each other, about a message that was not sent via text, but through a live broadcast that made an impression. A story about feelings that are disguised in professionalism, but feel real between every breath pause. And now, the world can only wait. Will Taehyung respond to the message? Or choose to remain silent forever? When silence becomes the only form of communication, then silence itself turns into a message. But what if the message never arrives? Or even more painful, what if the message arrives, but is never answered? That's what many in the army now believe after watching Jungkook's first live broadcast after his military service. It's not just a grand solo comeback or showing off a state of the art microphone in favor of a high-quality audio standard, but more than that, it's a confessional that's composed quietly, yet leaves an unusually large emotional explosion. And all of that leads to one name. Kim Taehyung, an army official on Twitter with the account @VHopeEvidence, compiled a thread containing a detailed analysis of every minute of the live. He compared the intonation of Jungkook's voice when mentioning change with the voice he used when mentioning the word that implies regret. He even matched Jungkook's facial expressions with old footage of him and Taehyung sharing the stage at a Speak Yourself concert a few years ago. The result was surprising. That emotion, same. But is all this just a collective illusion of the fans? Or is there really something big and yet to be revealed? Furthermore, many fans began to question the absence of a response on the part of the agency. HYBE, who is usually quick to deal with rumors so that they do not snowball, chose silence this time. Even after many Korean media outlets highlighted snippets from Jungkook's live broadcast that looked like an emotional farewell speech, not a single official clarification was issued. Why? Is it because there is something bigger they want to hide? Or rather, is this part of a long scenario towards BTS's return with an emotional story as the foundation for their comeback? Even more mysterious is the fact that Taehyung was in Los Angeles 2 days after Jungkook's live broadcast, with no reason explained to the public. Did he accidentally come to the place where they last met? Is it a form of reflection? Or is it an attempt to find answers to questions that have not yet been asked? One of the photos taken by fans showed Taehyung sitting alone on a park bench near the Santa Monica neighborhood. He was wearing a gray hoodie, loose pants, and a downcast face. No smiles, no cameras. Just a piece of twilight and an empty expression. The fans believed that was the last place they spoke before parting. And now, Taehyung's back there, alone. But the question remains the same. What exactly is there between them? Some sources say that towards the end of their military training period, the relationship between Jungkook and Taehyung began to cool down. Those who were once known to be very close, even nicknamed soulmates by the army, suddenly rarely seen mentioning each other's names, both in live, interviews, and social media posts. The suspicion that there is an internal conflict is widespread, especially after Jimin, who is known to be close to both of them, once wrote a cryptic sentence in a diary in the Weverse community. Sometimes you don't have to choose who is right, but you can only pray that you don't lose both. Did Jimin talk about them? The sentence was written just a week after a behind-the-scenes video of their military training was released, and from that video, Taehyung and Jungkook are nowhere to be seen together, as if there was an invisible border between the two. And now, after Jungkook's emotional live and Taehyung's long silence, curiosity turns to worry. What if the BTS reunion announced on July 1st, 2025 is just a formality? What if there are old wounds that have not completely healed, and all we see is a facade mask installed for the sake of pleasing the public? The reunion concert was indeed planned for spring 2026, and it was met with great enthusiasm from fans. However, after Jungkook's emotional broadcast, some fans began to feel uneasy. Whether the concert will really be a warm moment of togetherness, or is it just the last stage before the real breakup? Even more touching, one fan with the account @BTS Letters from Seoul revealed that he received a letter from the fanbase community that collects messages for BTS members. In that letter, he wrote, "Jungkook, if you can't tell Taehyung directly, we'll tell you. But we hope one day you'll be able to talk to yourself, because we know you're not just coworkers. You are the story we all strive for." The phrase went viral, and many feel probably it's not just about two K-pop idols feuding secretly. It's about two humans who once came together, then slowly moved away without having time to say goodbye. That what Jungkook wants to convey through his broadcast. The word change may sound familiar, but in the context of both of them, it was a wound. From the beginning, their friendship wasn't easy. They grew up with different personalities, principles that didn't always align, and ambitions that sometimes clashed. But that's precisely where their uniqueness lies. Jungkook is introverted but sensitive, and Taehyung is expressive but very loyal. A rare combination, dangerous when in conflict. Now, the world is wondering, will Taehyung answer that message? 1 week after Jungkook's broadcast, during a photo shoot for Vogue Korea magazine, Taehyung was asked about BTS comeback preparations. He replied with a slight smile, "I hope everyone comes back with a whole heart." That sentence ambiguous. Is he being sarcastic or missed? And perhaps most heartbreaking is the fact that to this day, there is not a single direct interaction between them on social media. No likes, no comments, no reposts. Just shut up. There's a lot of noise in the ears of fans, If you think this is just speculation from fans, wait a minute, as one of the production staff for BTS's comeback documentary scheduled to air in early 2026 leaked important information. There was a very emotional segment. We had to stop filming because someone came out of the room and cried. That's not acting. It's real. Who's crying? And why? Did it have to do with the moment when they all came back together after a long separation? Or is it related to the confrontation between Jungkook and Taeil? Many hope the documentary will reveal a side that has never been shown to the public. But maybe the truth hurts too much. Clearly, the message has been sent. Through live broadcast, through the song, through a blank stare. And now, only time will tell if the message will be answered, or it will hang forever. Did it really all start in Los Angeles? Or even further back, long before the live broadcast, before the farewell, even before the draft began? To understand the depth of Jungkook's message, we need to go back to a time when everything was still warm, when their laughter sounded honest, when hugs were not just a formality, and when their eyes looked for each other without even needing a voice. It happened in 2020, when BTS was working on the album B, a project that has been called the most personal album of their entire career. I end the documentation for the creation of B. There is one segment that was not paid much attention to before. The segment when Taeil wanted to include his creation song, Blue and Gray, a song about depression, emptiness, and loss of direction. Jungkook listened to the song attentively. In one clip, he says quietly, "I feel like I know who you're talking about." That sentence left everyone in the room speechless for a moment. But at that time, no one asked him further. But now, after all the clues that emerged from Jungkook's post-military live broadcast, fans are again highlighting the cut of the clip. Are there any secret messages they send to each other? Is their relationship, as close as it may seem on the surface, actually filled with many things that are never finished being talked about? In 2021, when BTS performed in Los Angeles for permission to dance on stage, there was one small incident that was barely seen by the public. In one of the recordings from fans sitting in the first row, there is a moment when Jungkook holds Taeil's hand in the middle of the song, but the next second lets go as if in doubt. Taeil stared at him for a long time, then smiled but do not clasp back. That moment just passed, but right now, it's being dissected in various fan threads. And again, the question arises, what makes the grip slip? Shortly after the concert, they began to appear together less often. Each began to explore individual projects. Jungkook with his vocal studio, Taeil with jazz and photography projects. The difference is natural. But when the two began to avoid mentioning each other's names in interviews, fans began to feel that something was wrong. One of the radio interviews in early 2022 even made a splash. When the DJ asked Jungkook, "Which member do you miss the most when you're alone abroad?" he replied, "Jimin." There is nothing wrong with that answer, but what made the uproar was his expression after saying that name. He laughed lightly, but stared blankly ahead. Some ARMY captured that expression as a form of doubt, or maybe regret, because previously, in various interviews and variety shows, the name Jungkook most often mentioned in the context of longing, togetherness, or admiration. It's Taeil. What's changed is that the change Jungkook was referring to in his live broadcast after the military. Let's go back to that broadcast point. One of the most striking clues is Jungkook's choice of high-end microphone, the Neumann TL-103, a microphone that is more often used for studio recordings than regular live. Why did he choose such detailed sound quality for an Instagram live session? Many believe that he wants to be sure of his emotional voice, intonation, even a quiet whisper. It can sound obvious, especially by someone who may not be among the millions of general audience. And in the 11th minute of the broadcast, the last second before he closed, Jungkook said, "We'll see you again if time permits." Then he looked at the screen, smiled wistfully, and said quietly, "You know, I never really left." That sentence is not for the ARMY. That sentence sounds too personal. Several nonverbal communication experts also commented on the broadcast. In a body language discussion forum run by a K-pop fan psychologist, an expert stated that Jungkook's expression in the broadcast showed unresolved emotional attachment. He avoids direct eye contact with the camera at the mention of farewell and sighs